Good morning. The songs that you hear today have special meanings. Some are in Hebrew. This is a service based on Yom Kippur, just the theme of it. And so I'll do little introductions before each song. The first one, Doug is rendering, which is beautiful, is called Who by Fire. It's by Leonard Cohen. And he wrote this in 1974, still impacted by the Yom Kippur War. Who knew when I gathered all this together weeks ago that we would be again lamenting the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War alive. So this song is very appropriate. It's called Who by Fire, and the words originate from a solemn prayer chanted in a traditional synagogue or temple during Yom Kippur services, Unitarian Universalist, which he sang in temple as a child. And the chant gravely asks us to consider what fate the next year holds for us, who will live and who will die. The line, "And who shall I say is calling," signifies a break from faith. What is our fate? Who will live? Who will die? And how then will we live?
Something blunt, who by avalanche, who by powder, who for his greed, who for his hunger, and who shall I say is calling? Ascent, who by accident, who in solitude, who in this mirror, who by his lady's command, who by his own hand, who in mortal chains, who in power, and who shall I say is calling?
Thank you, Doug. Good morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Church of Cincinnati. My name is Barbara Bonney, and I will serve as your worship leader today. I'm grateful to share this service with you this morning, both in person and online. Our congregation was founded in 1830, and we have worshiped in this building since 1889. But we acknowledge that we occupy stolen land that is the ancestral home of the Adena, Hopewell, Miamia, and Shawnee peoples. This is an uncomfortable history of injustice. As we acknowledge our discomfort, we take a step toward atonement. Our church is a place you can bring your whole self, your full identity, your questioning mind, your expansive heart. We are a community committed to social justice and to supporting the various spiritual and ethical paths of our members and friends. Our congregation strives to be welcoming to all, so you will see signs for various accommodations, such as gender-neutral restrooms and hearing assistance devices. These are also listed on the back of the order of service. Please ask our ushers if you have any questions. The flowers this morning are given by Mary Tarbell-Green in celebration of Mary and Barry's 39th anniversary. I have one early announcement. The call has been extended for volunteers from the congregation to serve on the developmental goals team. This is an opportunity to work with the congregation, the board, and the minister toward achieving our goals for this developmental ministry. We will also resend the message with information and instructions via email, so watch out for that. Please read carefully. Deadline for submitting expressions of interest has been extended to October 24th. Barbara Dickerson is the point of contact. She will be available after the service to answer questions. Now we greet our neighbors and until I ring the bell.
So this is an unusual candle lighting, and if you have your teal hymnal, you can turn to 137. We're going to do it not singing, but as a call and response. And your response, which Vanna White will lead you in, is we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. So, in lighting the candle, for remaining silent when a single voice would have made a difference, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin in love. For each time that our fears have made us rigid and inaccessible, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time we have struck out in anger without just cause, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For each time that our greed has blinded us to the needs of others, and we begin again in love. For the selfishness that sets us apart and alone, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For falling short of the admonitions of the Spirit and each other, we begin again in love. For losing sight of our unity, we forgive ourselves and each other. We begin again in love. For those and so many other acts, both subtle, evident, subtle, not so evident, which have fueled the illusion of separateness, we forgive ourselves and each other. And for all who care to, who are willing in body or spirit, we are going to sing hymn number 1029, Love Knocks, and waits for us to hear. If you want to stand, if you're able.
To Apologize by David LaRochelle, illustrated by Mike Winotka. Everyone makes mistakes. Whether you are big or small. And when you've made a mistake that has hurt someone or something, the right thing to do is apologize. Apologizing can be hard, especially if the other person is mad or if it's someone you don't like. But it's important to apologize anyway, even if that person owes you an apology too. Your apology can be simple. Tell the other person you're sorry for what you did. I'm sorry I borrowed your socks without permission. Don't make excuses. No. I'm usually much more careful, but I had an itch on my knee and a mosquito flew down my throat and I was trying to avoid a dangerous-looking crack in the sidewalk, and if your ladder wasn't taking up so much space, I wouldn't have bumped into it. Yes. I'm sorry I knocked you over. And be sincere. Not sincere. Mom told me I had to apologize for putting your doll in the fishbowl, or I can't go outside and play baseball, so I'm sorry. Not sincere. Ha! Ha! I'm sorry I accidentally squirted you with the garden hose when you were weeding the flower bed. But you have to admit, you look hilarious. Not sincere. Look at the new glow-in-the-dark watch I got for my birthday. And I'm having a cupcake party on Saturday, and I'm sorry I sat on your violin. And guess who's going to be the star of the dance recital next week? Me! Sincere. I'm sorry I popped your balloon. I really am. You can also apologize with a note. Dear Sloth, I am sorry I stepped on your toes. I should not have been running so fast. Snail. Even if the mistake happened a long time ago. Do you remember back in 1987 when I called you a pokey pants? Yes? It's never too late to apologize. I'm sorry. Thank you. If possible, try to fix the mistake. But sometimes you can't. In that case, you can still say you're sorry. Then take steps to avoid making the same mistake again. We're very, very sorry. It might be difficult, but apologizing will make you feel better. Most importantly, it will make the other person feel better. And that's why we apologize. I wonder, who do you need to apologize to?
Alex has initiated a new practice for us, and that is when we're outward focused, and in particular with the kids and the energy, then we get into sort of the heart of the service. We want to try to come home to ourselves, and so taking a deep breath, feeling more centered, And today we're going to do that with Shema, which is a chant in Hebrew, and it's beautiful. It's tonal. And so Nick is going to sing for us Shema, Israel.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kavod, Malkuto, Eolam Vaed.
And now we're ready for the offering. And as the plates are passed, Barry will sing or will play the offertory.
Good morning. Whew. I don't want to say that's the only reason I've stayed married to him for so long, but whew, it's way up there. So again, unfortunately, we are in the midst of another Yom Kippur war, and so we keep that in our hearts today with all involved. So today's service is inspired by the Jewish holidays of Rosh Hashanah, which began the evening of September 15th and ended at sundown on September 17th. The 10 days starting with Rosh Hashanah and ending with Yom Kippur are known as the days of awe, or days of repentance, and are a time of reflection from mistakes made and ways to make amends or make right those mistakes before Yom Kippur. Some take this time in a more traditional practice to sincerely apologize 3 times to the person they may have hurt or injured in some way. It's a time of conscious contact with the God of your understanding, or your Adonai, or Gaia, or Spirit. It's a time to meditate and contemplate toward regrets and toward forgiveness. Yom Kippur began the evening of September 24th and ended on Monday, September 25. Traditionally, the last day of Yom Kippur is used to fast and again reflect, and the service itself is then ended with a break fast. The fasting is a practice of purification and atonement. Yom Kippur itself is considered the holiest day of the year, which is why we're honoring the theme and we're honoring the music that's played during that time. The part of these 2 high holidays or high holy days, as we lean into Yom Kippur and the practice of its days of atonement, which is what the day is called. If we were to combine scoundrel, the sermons of Alex, that term of endearment that we're a beloved, I love you, mistakes and all, and then combine that with the notion of narrative, the story that we tell ourselves about the things we kind of messed up on. Then a day of atonement, or the notion of the practice of atonement being a time when we look and we examine, we reflect, and we admit our mistakes or our misgivings. And then we ask, in the spirit of humility, for forgiveness toward our need and desire to be in love and of love, which is foundational for us as a community. And that's what we're diving into today. Every practice or tradition has at its core a belief or a practice of atonement. Whether in my childhood tradition, it was called confession. You walked into a little cubicle that was dark, and you heard this where the screen went, and then you confessed, which really as a kid, 7, 8, 9 years old, I kind of made things up. I mean, I wasn't a bad kid. And then we're given prayers for forgiveness. 3 Our Fathers, 2 Hail Marys. Most indigenous cultures have long held spiritual practices having a right way of life and a way of knowing in all of my relations. That's foundational for them. It's embedded into their daily lives. They believe that they must first forgive the person who has harmed them. Next, it's their practice of forgiving others that may have played a role in that. And then making contact with their Creator or Great Spirit. And then finally, forgiving themselves. As we today stand on the lands of the Miami, Hopewell, and Adena and acknowledge these lands stolen, we acknowledge the tension of the fact that we stand and practice on their lands, echoing the tension, saying out loud, and practicing strong principles in our own acts of atonement. And so by that I mean, we can't give back the lands, here we stand, but we can say out loud what that is for us and what the tension is that we hold. In the 12-step program, there's a fundamental practice of doing a personal inventory, humbly admitting errors and missteps, and asking in prayer and meditation for forgiveness, making direct amends or indirect amends by changing your behavior. As well, they hold the spiritual axiom that states, every time we are disturbed, no matter what the cause, there is something wrong with us. That is a tall order. And it's a practice of vigilance and mindfulness in our actions and reactions. So if you've done me wrong and I react, I have a part in that. So in this diving into, for me, when I get snarky or reactive, when I miss the mark between me and the God of my understanding, or Gaia, or grace, that's when I turn into this. And I would appreciate it that you don't talk to him about this after the service. But I'm like the lizard. I get all prickly, and I get hard, and I get all snarly. And so this is a good service for all of us who get prickly and snarly in our own ways. Do you remember when we were little that we had to take a time out, or say we're sorry, or we got grounded, or we had privileges taken away because we were bad? Rosh Hashanah is the beginning of a new year in the Jewish calendar, and Yom Kippur, a day of atonement, is a means by which we can admit and amend behaviors. And we can have a clean slate for the new year, Rosh Hashanah being the new year, which can start for us at any time. Not on the Jewish calendar per se, but the spirit of that. The practice of a Day of Atonement is no holding on to regrets or resentments, a hands-on, boots to the ground practice of putting into action our need and desire for forgiveness and ultimately love. I don't mean the kind of I'm sorry if you think I hurt your feelings, but a deep dive into exploring, in the tradition of fasting, not having food stuffed down our feelings or anything else that we might do to distract ourselves, but sitting with and being in community with where we have faltered, where we have missed the mark between us and love, and allowing ourselves to feel the pain and the discomfort of our mistakes, and understanding the depth of our shortcomings, and then coming to a place through our remorse or self-forgiveness toward a cleaner slate, toward a more healthy, heartfelt beginning again. I'm going to do a little side note. As a hospice chaplain, this is very important at end of life. For example, a patient is in pain and the nurse has done everything to palliate that pain. She or he may ultimately call the chaplain and say, I don't think it's about physical pain. I think it's more existential. They're holding on to something. Something's not right in their universe. And so I come in and I sit with them around any regrets or any loss, or what are they saying goodbye to and what do they need to say goodbye to? So we're not at end of life, but we're here today with that opportunity to do that heartfelt kind of reflection. Often during services in congregations, we repeat Ecclesiastes, or some of you may sing along with the Byrds' 1965 rendering of Turn, 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 because the message is universal. To everything there is a season, a time for purpose under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to sow, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather them up, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away, a time to rend and a time to sow, a time to keep silent and a time to speak, a time for love and a time for hate, a time for war and a time of peace. We could spend our entire time on those sentiments, on our world, on the ups and downs and the ins and the outs and the gives and the takes and the givings and the misgivings and our sadnesses and our joys. So here today, what does this mean to me? What does this mean to you? How can we get meaning out of all of this, and why should we? Because we're striving to be a people of community, of love and inclusiveness and belonging. Because our world today feels anything but. With the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, with mass shootings, with flash robberies, with Ukraine, Israel, with climate change and destructions. At a time it seems like we're each asking ourselves, what can I do? How can I help? And with our own sense of helplessness and powerlessness in the world around me, what can I do? How can I help? What does atonement mean for me, for us today? And what does forgiveness look like for me and for us today? So I'm going to borrow from Rabbi Bob Barr of Beth Adam the words that they use in their Yom Kippur service. Today we reflect and turn inward to find ourselves and our inner voice. We turn outward to find others and to share moments of compassion and love, reaffirming the values that we cherish. Values of our time and resources that have been given to us. And we rejoice with gratitude in life's pleasures. The feelings, the regrets, the disappointment, the shame, the anger that we explore here today is not a means of self-punishment, but more of motivation or inspiration toward our desire and intention to change and repair. Possibility of a new relief and release of old habits, old hurts. Breathing in the ever so cool, crisp autumn time of change, putting to rest fallen expectations. There are as many means and ways to grow and to let go as colors of the fall leaves. And as Rumi said, there are thousands of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. There are 1,000 ways to go home again. The traditional song played during Yom Kippur is the Kol Nidre. And it means all vows. It's meant as a means or a thought or a prayer in its literal sense to annul any personal oaths or contracts, which really preemptively invokes us not to sin or error in the coming year. Grant us pardon, grant us forgiveness. May we be bathed in mercy. The Kol Nidre. So in closing, go now, today, into the crisp autumn weather with your regrets softened, remorse abated, expectations diminished, amends studied, open-hearted willingness ignited. For the soil of love tilled and rich in your inner commitment to love. May it be so, and so it is. And we will extinguish the candle with the words above you. Well, it's above me. If you can recite the closing words. Our closing song, our postlude recessional, is Avenu Malkeinu, a beautiful rendition on YouTube by Barbara Streisand. And again, like the Kol Nidre, it's a provocative prayer for forgiveness. Literal sense of removing pestilence and famine and destruction. And the request for forgiveness of inequities. It invites the spirit of forgiveness and compassion, and you'll hear this played today with such love as to render your heart unlocked and open.